After watching Monarch Legacy of Monsters episodes 1 and 2, I said on Twitter that I had my issues, but that I was excited to see the rest of the series. I was genuinely very excited to see what would happen next. However, having given the show some thought, then going back and re-watching episodes 1 and 2 again, the issues have waxed and the excitement has waned. Let's start with the small stuff and make our way up to the big stuff. Monarch Legacy of Monsters looks great. The sets, locations, shots, you name it, it looks good. There are some odd editing choices which can be jarring sometimes, and the occasional editing cock-up which I admittedly didn't notice until the second watch through. There are one or two bad bits of CGI too, namely compositing, but I can ignore and allow that given they need the CGI budget for the big stuff. Speaking of, the dragon in episode 2 looked well done, at least in the few shots we saw of him. Hopefully we get more next episode. And there's a couple of pictures of him in the episode 1 files, which makes me wonder what else might be hinted at before we see it.
Is that Bigfoot?
The actors are doing a pretty good job. It's just what they're being told to do that annoys me. Why, oh why, is the Monsterverse determined to give us unlikable female protagonists? From Madison in Godzilla vs. Kong, to that cow in Skull Island, no, I am not going to bother to remember her name, to Kate Randa in this show. Her whole problem is the secrets her father kept from her and her mother. Then she spends the first 2 episodes not telling her mother anything. She also spends the rest of the time being belligerent and unhelpful to the other family, who are just as confused and upset as she is. None of which is helped by this line.
I like you.
What is this, a Disney IP? I'm not a fan of the back and forth storytelling. Admittedly, this is highly subjective, but I feel a lot of the tension is being broken up with the constant back and forth time jumping. In the first episode, there was a connection being made between what was happening in the past and in the more recent past. Episode 2, not so much. This might be leading up to something in episode 3, but we're not there yet, so I'll have to wait and see. Which is unfortunately my judgment for a lot of the problems I have with Monarch Legacy of Monsters. In my critique of the film, I said Godzilla vs. Kong felt like a Disneyfication of the Monsterverse, a microcosm of the changes that took place in Star Wars and Marvel. Monarch Legacy of Monsters is that opinion come home to roost. The Monsterverse has played it fast and loose with its history, specifically of the Monarch organization. What sounds quite specific and detailed in the films, on further inspection, is up for interpretation.
In 1954, the first time a nuclear submarine ever reached the lower depths, it awakened something. Him.
From an age when the Earth was 10 times more radioactive than it is today. This animal, and others like it, consumed this radiation as a food source. The organization we work for, Monarch, was established in the wake of this discovery. A multinational coalition formed in secrecy to search for him, study him, learn everything we could.
Monarch is on the cusp of being shut down, Brooks. We're broke.
It's a fairy tale.
Harry Truman didn't think so when he funded Monarch in 1946.
Was the multinational Monarch formed in 1954 after Godzilla was discovered and his murder attempt failed? Or was Monarch around beforehand as a small US government division that expanded in 1954 because of Godzilla. Who knows, and up until now, that vagary has benefited the world building of the Monsterverse. Now the Monarch series is trying to nail down exactly how it started, and is not exactly being careful about it. In 1959, Dr. Mira and a young Randa are described as,
I gotta give it to you guys, you make it look easy. Being able to keep Monarch together, that's no small feat.
but in 1952, they are looking for monsters with neither mentioning Monarch. Is one of them in Monarch, and they're not telling the other? Are neither of them, and this is what got them to join? Also, Godzilla was the catalyst for Monarch expanding in 1954, or being established, depending on your reading of the 2014 scene. Yet in episode 2, they find a dragon that's scooped up a warship 2 years prior. Or at least we think it scooped the ship up. In my opinion, the dragon looks way too small to have done that. Which leads onto a big example of the problems this series is causing. There's little details here and there which I could probably poke at that cause problems, like the whole enforced secrecy thing, or Monarch soldiers and scientists casually strolling around during the Golden Gate Bridge event. But there's one big problem that needs to be pointed out.
You heard of the USS Lawton? Out of 1,000 young men on that ship, I was the only survivor. I spent the last 30 years trying to prove the truth of what I learned that day.
What is that?
The Lawton.
How the fuck did the warship that had pictures taken of it after its supposed run-in with a sea monster end up in the Philippines, miles from the ocean? Ignoring the size of the dragon or any other explanation as to how it physically made the trip, how did it make the trip after this photo was taken? This causes so many issues, it's unreal. This is also ignoring some of the promotional posters of what looks like Godzilla's spines in what looks to be this area. If it turns out Godzilla dragged the ship here, then had a nap, and these three witness him waking up, that will ruin the history of the Monsterverse. As with other IPs, I am happy to see more being done with the Monsterverse. I am less happy when what we're being given doesn't work with what we already have. I'm going to keep watching Monarch Legacy of Monsters because there is definitely entertainment value here. However, depending on what exactly it does and where it goes, this may be a tipping point in my investment in the franchise. We shall see.